wrong Spitfire.
Hello. We're all laughing hilariously.
Hello, we have ways of making you talk, listeners and viewers. It is I, Al Murray, in a Messerschmitt 109, and don't be 6'3" and try and fly one of these bloody things.
But Al, you're not in any old ME 109. You are in literally the almost airworthy only ME 109E flying in the world, and this isn't just any old ME 109E either. This is the personal mount of Hans Joachim Marseille.
Yeah.
In the Battle of Britain.
Yeah, I hope he was short.
He was a bit shorter. Yeah.
I mean, there is no room in here at all. I know the Spitfire has that sort of rounded canopy.
It does. That's right.
But this is like, anyway. I think I might.
Do you want me to take your mic? Yeah, open the canopy and then you've got.
That's it. That's better.
But it's amazing. I mean, if you look at the control column, I mean, the grip on it is much nicer than the Spitfire, isn't it?
Well, yes, it doesn't have that round thing on the. I mean, I don't know. I need to somehow send my 12-year-old self a telegram and say you sat in a 109. This is quite extraordinary. What's the difference between this and the Spitfire then? Principally,
there's a lot. Well, principally, this is basically a much better engineered aircraft in every respect.
In every respect,
from the airframe.
You realise what you're saying?
I know, from the airframe to the engine, to the methods of production, way superior to our Spitfires.
Right, so from top to bottom. So the way the wings built, the way the fuselage is put together, the engine,
and even I haven't flown this yet. Hopefully one day, but those that have flown it say it's almost it mirrors the baby Spitfire. So the Spitfires with the smaller engine, the Mark 5s, for instance, they are the best. They are the epitome of the Spitfire and its handling characteristics. And this apparently is exactly the same.
Right,
that's the feeling. So it's very light, very agile.
And it's got this very, very small wing with a much, much higher wing loading, which does make it a little bit more frisky.
It does
to take off and land, and it's got this incredible torque. I mean, actually, the undercarriage is about the same because it's splayed.
Yeah.
But the advantage of that is that it's on the undercarriage is actually on the fuselage.
Yeah,
rather
so
than on the wing,
it won't
so
come
you
up
just
through
take
the wing
wings
if you screw up.
No, it won't actually. But it's got these little devices on the leading edge of the wings.
Yes,
these little slats.
Yeah.
That will pop out if you start to get the aircraft a bit slow or you're a bit heavy on the controls. You'll get some warning of it, and it will keep flying beyond when the Spitfire
would have stalled.
Yeah.
And it's that enables them to outturn the Spitfire.
Yeah. Yep.
If in the hands of a very experienced and competent pilot.
Yeah.
Now, because you restore Spitfires all the time, but did you restore this aircraft?
No, we didn't. This belongs to an Australian collector. There's only two flying Messerschmitt 109Es in the world at the moment.
Wow.
The other one's in the States, but it's owned by, as I say, an Australian collector. We're waiting for the engine to be completed. It's undergoing an overhaul at the moment, and then we should be flying again. But that is really all we've done. It came to us as a complete aeroplane, but just needed some maintenance work going on it.
It's restored by a fellow called Craig
Charleston.
Who's a lovely, lovely bloke. He's such a nice guy. And he's got this amazing shed near his house in Ipswich, and it's just full of ME 109 bits.
But if you had to start tomorrow on an ME 109, how would you address a fresh engineering restoration project like that? Where would you begin?
Well, as James just said, that this has already been restored, heavily restored, so all the information is there. But we would need the help of Craig Charleston. Craig Charleston is
he's the man in the world.
He's the man for Messerschmitt 109s 9Es. So it's already been done. The hurdles have already been crossed, and then with his help, we could do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Build fresh jigs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Work out how to. Because the wing isn't panelled or as extensively panelled as the Spitfire wing, is it?
It's almost
flat. It's almost
straight.
Flat. It's single pieces rather than the endless sort of jigsaw of the.
That's exactly right. The biggest issue with these with the Messerschmitt is the engine and engine spares, and the knowledge that it doesn't exist like it does with the Merlin engine. So we've got an engine. We've had issues with the engine, and it's really because we don't really understand the full mechanics of it, how it works, and the manufacture of parts is a problem because some of the information is missing. So without that, It's a case of analysing parts, original parts.
Mercedes-Benz?
Mercedes-Benz, Daimler
And
Benz.
they want nothing to do with it.
Daimler-Benz 601.
And they want nothing to do with it now, I suppose. It's not like Rolls-Royce who happily
No, maybe
crack
not.
open the plans from.
So it's all got to be done outside of that, and that makes it very difficult.
Yeah.
But there was no Packard making them in the war,
No.
so that although they did make thousands and thousands of them,
Yeah.
there's just not the kind of, they were sort of destroyed at the end of war, a large number of them. And second thing, because there's only kind of 3 or 4 Messerschmitts in the entire world that are kind of airworthy or close to being airworthy, there just, as Peter says, there just isn't that knowledge.
Yeah.
There isn't that experience. There isn't.
No.
There aren't the machine tools. There aren't the
If you
jigs.
want to know
There
what's
aren't
going
anything.
on inside an engine, apart from taking it apart, I mean, what can you stick it in an MRI machine or something and have you know what I mean? Like have a look inside it.
Yeah, well, no, you
X-ray it.
You would completely dismantle the engine and the critical components that you need to manufacture, crankshaft bearings, and obviously all the horrible moving parts that there are no spares for. Critical parts, they're the bits that have become the issue, and you'd have to analyse them. You can obviously cut through them and analyse material just to see what you've got. But it's just the manufacturing processes are the problem. It's not the actual material specification, but how do you make it? How do you bond this material to that material?
That would get quite expensive quite quickly.
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah,
it?
very.
Yeah.
It's expensive enough when we know how to do it.
Because the Spanish 109s, after all, the Spanish 109s, after all, have a Merlin on, don't they? And
They do.
do,
so
yeah.
that's a more straightforward prospect, which is why those exist
Yeah, it is.
and fly.
It is. But there's a few of those around, and but they're sort of being modified into Messerschmitts.
Right.
So the need for Messerschmitt engines, Daimler-Benz engines, is actually becoming greater. So
Wow.
over a period, we will gain the knowledge that we need. As we've gained it with the ongoing operation of Spitfires, it will happen with these. We just need to be patient.
Amazing.
They are amazing.
What about an FW190? Anyone doing that?
Well, there have been quite a few 190s. I mean, the amazing thing is they've got one at Hendon.
They have
which is
two-seater.
a two-seater. It's
They
a
used to
two-seater.
run it.
They used to run
at
it,
St Athan.
and it is 100% original.
Wow.
Yes, I can remember them running the engine in the 80s, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, they used to,
That's
at
amazing.
RAF St Athan, where it was in store, they used to wheel it outside and kick the tyres and tip some fuel in. And have you found some money in there, or have you?
No, I
broken
haven't. It's leather lined. And inside of it's got like a little. It's like a little leather lined pocket.
Yes,
It's unbelievable.
we lines the pocket
With leather.
Ja,
Ja.
das ist mit Leder. Das ist sehr schön. Ja.
So unfortunately, we've got no Focke-Wulf 190s here yet. There is a substantially original one flying in the States that belonged to the Flying Heritage, which is Paul Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly not with us anymore, but his collection still exists. He's got there's one there, and there's one we're talking about, the Hendon one, which is original, and they used to run the engine in the 80s.
Yeah.
Sadly, they still don't. But I guess it's.
I mean, if you had to, you could jump in this and fly this pretty much straight off, could you?
would struggle
once
at the
the
moment
engine's in.
because it's got no bloody engine
well,
in
of
it.
course,
But
obviously. But you know what I mean? I mean,
Yes.
this cockpit's
Yes, it
essentially
is.
the same, familiar, the same dials, same controls, essentially.
you would need to read up the pilot's notes to see what the differences are and understand the gauges, because some of them are metric and they've got their own way of representing power settings and things, which are way different to the Spitfire. It's got an electric operation of the propeller, which is on the Spitfire, it's hydraulic. So there are differences, you need to understand them. And but sitting in the cockpit with some pilot's notes, taxiing around a bit, getting to used to where all the switches and knobs and dials are, yes, it'd be fairly straightforward.
Höchstgeschwindigkeit mit Volt ausgefahren, Landgekleppen, 250 kilometres an hour. I don't know what that means.
I would say
Whatever you
that's-
do, don't put the flaps down at 250k.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's exactly what that means.
Start 20 degrees, Landung 40 degrees. Landen, Klappung, Stellung, Fluschenstellung, no degrees. But eventually
You would.
You'd just pick
It's
it up.
it's still
Because they're
orthodox.
fundamentally the
They're
same.
fundamentally the same. It's just a representation in front of you.
Yeah.
But the interesting about this is when they tried to sort of move it on from the Emil, which is what this is. This is the 1940
Can't do
vintage.
it.
They go up to the F, and then they go up to the to the
Gustav,
Gustav. The airframe is a 1930s airframe, and you know, when you put this alongside for all its brilliance and for all of the simplicity of its construction and all the rest of it, you put this alongside a Mustang, you suddenly think, oh yeah, this is a bit dated, and it's got nowhere to go. It's got no development to go.
Well,
really.
which is
and they're forcing it into something that it can't be, and they try and do the kind of ME209, which is, you know, a kind of replacement of it, and that turns into a dud. And then I think they'd even do a 309, and that's even more of a dud. So they just go, okay, well,
but that's what's interesting about the Spitfire, though, because we've talked about the means of production is very much 1930s, but the airframe is open-ended enough to double the horsepower, double the loading.
That's right. Yeah. They get it to this almost a smooth transition from 1936 through to 45 with the advent of the jets. It's almost a smooth transition.
They basically get 10 years out of the airframe,
exactly.
don't they?
Yeah. And then
whereas with this, it's just there is this absolute compelling need to get more power out of it.
Yeah.
But the power comes at a price, and the price is manoeuvrability and a whole host of other things.
Yeah.
And it's just and that's why Joachim Marseille, who flew this in the Battle of Britain, you know, he comes out of his 109G, I think it is. It's a brand new 109G, and you know, has an engine fire. And the reason it has the engine fire is because they don't have the right oil, so they've got synthetic oil, and it's not good enough, and it overheats, and boom, it's on fire. So he bails out, hits the tailplane, breaks his neck, and that's him gone.
Yeah.
And it's just a complete waste. I mean, it's you know, probably a good thing for the RAF, but
but they are known. They were known for their landing accidents. I think mainly it's with the small airfields that they were operating in.
These bumpy airfields.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that
they don't
terrific
like
torque.
Also,
narrow undercarriage.
Exactly.
You can't see much in the forward direction in this aircraft, can you?
No.
I mean, the canopy's small enough and squat enough, but then there's, you know, again, the engine is in your way, isn't it?
It
so
is, very
you must
much
have to come in, like looking over the wing and sort of pootle in and try and come in sideways a bit, which you do in the Spitfire, don't you? Have to
exactly. With a Spitfire, it's probably equally as the visibility is very similar.
Yeah.
In other words, you can't see. So when you're on that last couple of 100 feet, the runway or where you want to land, you can't necessarily see, but the peripheral vision, and same with this, is very good.
Yeah.
So you can see out the sides, and especially with landing on a marked runway where you've got the edge markers, whether it's a tarmac, so you've got the tarmac edge to the grass, you can see it getting closer one side or the other, and you actually work on it to keep it straight. And this is no different.
Yeah.
But landing on just an open field and not knowing whether you're running straight because you wouldn't have a clue, that's when and it's being bumpy, so it's going from one wheel to the other. That's when the
trouble
problems
happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's the difference with the 190 is that it's got this
big wide undercarriage
sort of that turns in on itself. I mean, you know, it's interesting if you go to sort of February 1944. I think the Luftwaffe lose something like 3,200 aircraft in 1 month, something like that. I mean, it's just an absurd number, and I think it's something like 55% are accidents.
Yeah.
Just flying accidents and crashes and stuff. And that's because it's very, very difficult anyway, but by that stage they're so short of fuel that the pilots they're training are not being trained enough. So at the start of the war, you've got, you know, frontline pilot reaches his squadron, Staffel, in the German case, with probably about 150, 170 hours in their logbook, something like that, and maybe kind of 20 hours, 30 hours on type. By 1944, it's 90.
Wow.
And it's just not enough.
Yeah.
Whereas, in contrast, RAF pilots...
They've been in Canada for a year.
Well, yeah, and by the time... RAF and US Army Air Force pilots, fighter pilots, are reaching their frontline squadrons with kind of 350 hours. And that gulf, that qualitative gulf in pilots is totally unbridgeable.
It's why there's only one of these in here.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Exactly Spitfires and Hurricanes.
Yeah, but it absolutely is.
Yeah. I mean, the British got their hands on a few 109s, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Through the course of the war, because there's that squadron, isn't there? You can always look it up. There's pictures of these with roundels on and Heinkels with roundels on. When they got hold of the 109, they must have taken it apart and had a look at it. And was there anything to learn?
Yeah, well, the point is you're already on a production schedule, you know, and this is, as Peter was saying, this is so different from a Spitfire. So if you sort of go, hang on a minute, boys, let's start again. I mean, you take some of the lessons, forward with.
Well, you need a supercharger.
Well,
that's the
yes,
lesson
absolutely.
one.
You need cannons, lesson
Yeah,
two.
yeah.
But you don't have to catch a 109 to understand that. I mean, it's the next generation Hawkers are completely different to the Hurricanes. And they kind of start again. And some of the techniques for kind of wing building and fuselage construction, I guess, are kind of they're learning the lessons from this.
Yeah.
But there's also flaws with this, massive flaws
Yeah.
with this, which is the narrow undercarriage, the huge torque on landing, the fact that you're landing on these kind of bumpy airfields, grass airfields, which only 2 weeks before had cows on them. This is not designed for that. And if you've got a kind of sort of 30-40% accident rate, even at the start of the war, that tells you that there's something not quite right with this plane as a practical operating beast, which is why later on all those Tempest Typhoons, Mustangs, they all have inward retracting undercarriages, because it makes perfect sense to do so, and it makes no sense whatsoever not to.
Not losing aeroplanes.
But you're down that route with the Spitfire, and you can see that it's got that development. You're not going to suddenly start changing it in the middle of a war.
No, I think the main development of the Spitfire was the introduction of the injection carburettor, so it could then match the Messerschmitt 109, because that was a big problem. These Messerschmitt 109 the pilot could just push the control column forward, and the aircraft would just dive away.
Beatrice Schilling's orifice.
Exactly.
Schilling's orifice.
Yeah.
Have you got any of those around?
No, we haven't. It's just a washer.
It's just a washer, though.
Well,
that's the really funny thing about those. All those clever people at Rolls-Royce, and it's a washer. Someone goes, she points out, well, if you put a washer in there, that'll fix it.
That's it.
They must
Exactly
have all felt pretty bloody stupid.
But that just something that simple, that we were using float carburettors, which really dates back to the very first internal combustion engines. We were still using that, and the Germans with the fuel injection system that had been in operation years before the start of the war. I don't know what we were thinking of, but that's what they had over us without a doubt in the Battle of Britain.
The one point I would say, Bo, is that the first two 109s they captured were captured in May 1940, and May 1940 is also the month from which they're, I think, or is it even earlier than that they commission the Mustang.
Yeah,
maybe it's February they start it. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But the point is the Mustang, when it comes out, also has a very, very high wing loading. Yeah, like this, a very, very small wing.
Yep.
The difference is it's completely laminar flow rather than this kind of shape. So it is different, but the Mustang, in terms of kind of streamlined construction, is just in a kind of completely different league to everything that's come before.
It's the next phase.
It is.
Yes, it is, and because you can make it, I mean, I think a Mustang is 2/3 of the man hours to make of a P47.
Wow.
So obviously that then, if it takes only kind of a third less man hours, that's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
So it's about efficiencies and economies of scale and kind of making the absolute most out of kind of not very much, and that kind of bespoke engineering that you see on the Spitfire wing. I mean, obviously it is bespoke because it's bespoke specifically for the Mustang and everything, but it's not quite as, Mustang is just a totally different beast. And it is really, really interesting when you see, I mean, I remember going to see Richard Grace, and he had a Spitfire out there, and then he had a Mustang, and he had a Bouchon all in a row, and the Mustang just does look next generation.
It does, without a doubt. It's certainly got a lot of improvements over the Spitfire, but the thing that, again, that its failure in the beginning was the engine.
Yeah,
the Allison engine was a dud. It was a dud, and it made the aircraft absolutely useless.
Yeah.
So until the fitting of the Rolls-Royce or the Packard Merlin, it became a viable war machine. Without it.
And how robust are these? I mean, the DB601 obviously can take a lot of flak because it's cast iron rather than magnesium alloy, isn't it?
Yep.
So, Browning .303 hits that, it just gets squashed like a pea. But they're still fragile, delicate aircraft, aren't they?
Oh, they are.
Doesn't take much to knock them out.
No, it's like the weak point in all these aircraft is the cooling system. They've got radiators, and you've got a much bigger area that you can aim at that's going to do damage. So it could cause a problem. If you've got an air-cooled engine, you've got to aim at the engine. Not necessarily these. You could aim at this inboard section of the wing where you've got radiators and things. And if a bullet just finds its way into into the cooling
coolant, that's
system,
that.
it's game over. The aeroplane is going to not fly for much longer.
So why aren't all World War II fighter planes radial engines?
Well, I get in the I mean, they understood drag, profile drag, which is what you see when you look at the front of an aircraft. So you look
Yeah.
at the front, how much of it can you actually see? Well, if you look at a radial engine, you know, it's
enormous.
huge, it's enormous,
Yeah.
and that is all drag. And the only way to overcome that is more power, which is what happened with the American airplanes later in the war. The P-47's a huge engine.
This
is
a
a
lot
great-
of
great
wasted.
big engine,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
because it's overcoming the drag. But they're not in the earlier days. We didn't have the powerful radials that became available, even with the Germans with the BMW engine.
Yeah.
So we just had to make these things as sleek as we possibly could.
Yeah.
This was a success. So was the Spitfire. The Hurricane was a bit behind.
Well, the Hurricane's sort of halfway house, isn't
Exactly.
it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a biplane without the top wing.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's a
basically.
Fury.
Well, it is
It's a
interesting, isn't it?
Fury,
'Cause
Fury stripped down.
Because we've got a Hurricane sat next to us right here, and we're looking at it
It
in
looks
profile.
ancient.
Well, it does look ancient, but it is interesting that if you
Yeah.
look at the Hurricane in profile and then look at a kind of, Hawker Hart or one of those earlier, or Nimrods, one of those 1930s biplanes, it's basically the same. But as you say, with a monoplane rather than a biplane.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I don't want to get out.
No, because you can't.
You just want to fondle.
Yeah, 'cause basically
you want to
I
fondle
be a
the
bit of an
control
ordeal
column.
getting
I
out.
had to turn it upside down to fall out of it. Yeah.
It isn't. It's because you want
Absolutely
to fondle the
incredible.
control column.
It is. I need to take some personal photos for later. Quite amazing.
Yeah, it's quite a piece of kit, isn't
It
it?
is an incredible piece of kit. Yeah.
And super rare. I mean, it's super special, this plane. And because of the heritage and because it was flown by Hans-Joachim Marseille. And, a lot
Yeah,
of people say
absolutely.
that he was the absolute greatest. Him and Berling were the two to beat all. Because I know B.B. Hartman got 352 and Gunter Roll got his 275 and all the rest of it. Most of those were scored on the Eastern Front, where it's kind of easier. But all of Hans-Joachim Marseille's were against the RAF.
This is just amazing, though.
And most of them were fighter planes as well.
It's a super airplane.
17
to
in
have.
one day you got.
It's a super airplane to have in the hangar, but
Yeah.
if I have to be honest and say that when we have our visitors through the hangar, we have to explain every bit of it. It's not as interesting as a Spitfire. Shame, really, because it's.
Well, I feel like I'm
very-
cheating on the
yeah.
Spitfire a little right now. We came here to look at the Spitfire. We've ended up with their dirty little cousin.
Little shrine.
It's amazing. Right, I will try and climb
Special
out
aircraft, though, it really is.
It is,
Dignity.
Yeah, it's a real
Dignity
privilege
be
for us to have it in the hangar.
now.
Yeah.
Crikey.
Would be good to see it fly, though.
Yeah. Now, hopefully that will be in about a year, I would guess.
Winkle Brown never liked these, though. He said the visibility was so bad he didn't like it at all.
You can imagine that. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
looking out through.
He preferred the Heinkel 112.
Amazing.
Yeah, isn't it?
What a
Quite
privilege.
something.
Yeah,
Thanks, Peter.
no problem at all.
Yeah, well, I
And,
think
and all these bits as well behind us, bits of smash.
Yeah, that's a bit of a
Messerschmitt.
Messerschmitt 109G.
they're just going to carry on talking now. We'll see you soon. Cheerio.